Alright guys, today the topic is privacy, definitely online privacy, and it's about questions people are not asking, but that we should be asking. So before giving out some of the tools that I believe will help us become more free, is to talk about something that I've heard a lot from a lot of people that I talk to. They say, if you have nothing to hide, then you shouldn't care. And I mean, it sounds understandable, right? I don't think so. Honestly, there's a lot of reasons why we really should care about this more than just trying to hide something illegal that we're doing. I mean, you could be a completely law-abiding citizen, and there are more important things to think about. So here's one. It's from Edward Snowden. He said, "People who say I have nothing to hide misunderstand the purpose of surveillance. It was never about privacy. It was about power." Think about that. There's a lot of people that have power, big companies, governments. They all share it. They all buy it. We are the product. And this person down here says something kind of funny. Because it is actually said by Edward Snowden as well. Who was it that said, not caring about privacy because you have nothing to hide is like not caring about free speech because you have nothing to say? I think that's a really good point there. So there's one little other piece of an argument that I'd like to add to the whole, if you have nothing to hide, then you really shouldn't care. And it has to do with metadata. And metadata is a very important topic that most people don't really think about or care about because it's a little bit nerdy, it's a little techy, but it's very important. Metadata is basically, as it shows down here, look at these bullet points: location, device used, date and time, the sender, the recipient, and the length of the call. It could be the length of the chat. It could be length of anything because everything's data, everything's digital. So, I mean, you think about Facebook, it's a timeline practically for real. So, location is obviously important for any of these reasons. And metadata is very interesting too because let's just say they have location, they don't have your name, but they have the device used. And they might even have, let's say, a list of, in the last 25 minutes, the websites that you frequented. That right there can start to narrow down the field of people. Not, they might not be looking at you specifically, but putting you into some kind of algorithm, yeah, definitely. That narrows you down right there very easily. So metadata is something very important to think about. And then one last thing to say about the whole, if you have nothing to hide, if you're not doing anything illegal, then why should you care? Well, ironically, that was almost the exact phrasing, and it may not have been the original, origin of this phrase, but a man named Joseph Goebbels, who was the minister of propaganda for the Nazis, said this exact same thing, that if you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to worry about. And so that's kind of important because what that did and what it could be doing currently right now in our society is that, you're being surveilled, you're being watched, and what that might do is it could possibly lead you to do what's called self-censoring. You could be self-censoring. Now, I have a little article here talking about self-censoring, and it's on Wikipedia. Self-censorship is the act of censoring or classifying one's own discourse. This is done out of fear, so that's pretty important. I mean, fear is one of the most stark reactionary feelings that a human being can have. And then obviously it starts talking about pressure, intimidation, all these things. And that obviously in the past had been used upon, like, really like people that actually are giving their speech. So filmmakers, journalists, musicians, news anchors, that's a big important one, talking about all the fake news in the world today. Think about all that intimidation that's going on with all that stuff. So anyway, that's the reason why that is a very bad argument for someone to make, to try to act like, oh, I don't care, and really what they're doing is they're giving up responsibility. That's very important on this. So, all right, let's get to the meat and potatoes here. Here's some tools that can help you be more private and take back your security. First of all and foremost, everybody should be using a VPN. A VPN is a service that you should pay for, because if it's free, you are the product and you are not getting anything out of this service. In fact, what's actually happening is they're acting as if you're going to be getting this special tunnel that you can search for anything on the internet, and what it would do is it would hide this, or it would keep your information that you search for between you and the end source where you're searching for it. So if you land on a page such as Facebook, obviously the VPN isn't going to help you, because you're going to go to Facebook and Facebook's going to know everything that you're doing. So pretty much it's just a tunnel that you can go through that practically bypasses government surveillance, or mainly, actually more importantly, your ISP, your internet service provider. So one of my favorites, and you may have, if you know about VPNs, you probably have heard about it. It's a company called NordVPN, and coming on their page right now. And what they do is they, like I said, offer a tunnel that will allow for you to, once you connect up, and you should pay for it, but the cool thing about this service is they'll allow you to pay for it, but I think they give you up to like 6 devices free or something like that. So that's pretty neat. You can actually order this service and then put it on like a tablet, a computer, your phone. Obviously, you definitely want to be getting a VPN for your phone. Everybody has a device now in their pocket, and you want to be getting that VPN. So that's going to be really important for everybody to get into. The reason I showed NordVPN as one of these services is because there's a big deal with how people share information around the world, and mainly governments, but there are corporations sharing and buying information as well. And there's a big thing called the 14 eyes, and it's eyes like your eyes. And these are the countries that practically, with their intelligence agencies, will share amongst each other frequently. And mainly this was done originally around 9/11 to thwart terrorist attacks, or anything that was publicized that would be violent. So, I mean, granted, they had good reasons for doing it, but at the same time, all these 14 countries share all of their information. So, good intentions can lead to bad outcomes. There is one other one that I would like to show you. I mean, there's so many VPNs out there, but I want to show you one other one that personally I trust, because, again, you cannot trust all of these VPN companies, and like I said, especially if you are not paying for it, that is not helping you at all. So this is Proton VPN, and they're another VPN that is outside of the 14I countries, and you can see here. This one's pretty cool because they start talking a little bit about the security and privacy and the freedom, such as what I was talking about. So, I mean, really, in my opinion, this is an absolute. A VPN is something you must have. I don't see why anybody would be against this. Second on the list, all right, so that's the VPN, and I do believe those obviously are very important. or you can just order one and put it on all your devices, because most of these VPN companies will allow you to put it on a lot of devices. The next I want to talk about is a messaging service for your phone, and it's called Signal. It is end-to-end encrypted, and that's a fancy term for kind of saying the same thing as what the VPNs do. Instead of creating a tunnel, what this does is it will connect to the end user that you want to text with, and practically only you and that recipient then can see these messages, and vice versa. So if somebody sends you one and they're on Signal, then when you receive that, you also are the only one that can see what they sent. And what's cool is if you can look up right here at the top, right underneath the time there's like a phone icon with a lock. What's really cool about Signal is if you and the person you want to communicate with have Signal, you can click that icon and you can actually create, at that moment with that person, an end-to-end encrypted phone call. So you might have heard about how NSA, even though they weren't supposed to, have domestically been listening in on phone calls. Well, that would be a very good way to get around that and not have all your phone calls listened to by government agents. Or sometimes there are these things where police forces locally can actually set up what's called a stingray. And it tricks your phone into getting onto it like a normal cell tower, but really what you're doing is you're using it for the internet and they're just gaining all of your data. So some corrupt police forces in certain areas will use that. So I highly recommend Signal because it is a very awesome company. All of their stuff is open source, so people have done this. If you are knowledgeable on coding and how things work within applications, it's all open source. You can read everything that they have on there so that you can see how this works. And they actually created, you can check it out on their website, they actually created a new technology called Whisper. It does use end-to-end, but in the facet that they're using it with messaging apps, it's very ahead of its time. And actually, a lot of other apps out there that are using messaging systems that want to be private are taking this open source Whisper technology. So use Signal, the company that created the Whisper technology. And now we're on to email. We're always on our phones, but nowadays we don't use snail mail as much unless it's bills, so we use email. And if you're using Gmail, I mean, for work, most people are using Gmail. Companies love their suite to where you can have users and all of the people in your company organized together under one domain. So that is heavily used, and for work purposes, most people aren't going to be talking or doing stuff personally on their work email. But, I mean, I'm not really for that either. You really want to get away from these big data companies. So anyway, for personal use, I highly recommend here ProtonMail. It's really cool. They are also a company outside of the 14 eyes, those countries that can practically see everything, if you will. And it's based in Switzerland, as it's showing here. And by the way, that Proton VPN that I showed you, this is their mail service. And they actually created their mail service first and then created their VPN service. So this is an end-to-end encrypted email. And again, it basically just means that you, the sender, and your recipient, who you're sending it to, are the only ones that can read this, except if you want to send it to a Gmail account. So you could have a ProtonMail account and you could send it to somebody on Gmail, and because it's going to a Gmail account, Gmail can read everything in that email. So it's going to be more likely that if you really do have some sensitive information, that you want to use a ProtonMail account and email somebody that also has ProtonMail, or another email service that is end-to-end encrypted. That end-to-end encryption is very much ahead of its time right now. I mean, it's been around for a while, don't get me wrong, But right now, it's still really, really a good service out there and is offering the best in privacy. All right, so that's the best email service that I can offer you. And now on to maybe one of the most important tools that you could use. And I say that because search engines are something we use literally every day. Some people may even use it every hour. Okay, so this is my favorite personally. It's called StartPage.com. This is where I go if I'm going to go search for anything on the internet. And that's because Google, anytime you type something into the search bar right there, they are going to take it in. And what is really, really crazy about search engines, and a lot of people don't know this, is that search engines are, I mean, Bing does it too, all these search engines do it, except for StartPage. And let me go ahead and bring you to the other one that I like as well. But let me tell you what most search engines are doing besides StartPage and this other one here, DuckDuckGo.com. They are creating from your searches what is considered to be, or most people consider it to be, a filter bubble. And the filter bubble is a very unique kind of thing. The algorithms going around on the websites these days are very important. These algorithms are hidden, nobody sees them, but every time you type something in, your data is going into those algorithms. And what DuckDuckGo is telling you here is they don't store your personal information ever, which is also what StartPage does not do. They don't store any of your information. So that's obviously important. Google will. Now, here's another cool thing. They don't follow you around with ads. Google will. In fact, by the way, Google is literally an ad machine. Why do people get on Google AdWords? If you know what Google AdWords is, literally people, companies, whoever can create an account through Google AdWords and they are advertising to you on Google when you search. They're literally trying to get you to click on an ad. Google is all about ads. That's how they get paid. They're like Facebook. They get paid by ads. So anyway, doesn't matter about in or out of private browsing mode. Like there's browsers that have private browsing mode. It doesn't matter. DuckDuckGo, StartPage, they literally just do not take any of your information. So anyway, back to this filter bubble. Because they don't save any of this information, they don't track you. So they don't take in what you're actually searching. A filter bubble is created kind of like the internet echo chamber. And your data, when you search, put it in a search bar, is going into these algorithms, and these algorithms are just fascinated upon all these different results. And you can usually find sometimes every once in a while in a funny YouTube video the most searched results, and sometimes it's, it can be really funny, some of them, or just really unique ones. In fact, I mean, there are TV shows that have segments where they literally dedicate Google searches to, their entertainment section. Like, get to know this person better. Oh, what did they search about this celebrity? All this stuff. And guess what? All of that information goes into this filter bubble. And because they start to get to know who you are typing it in on the search engine, they're actually then returning to you different results than everybody else out there in the world. And I think that's a very dangerous thing. Why should you be receiving different results on Google than maybe somebody else that's just going on there and typing in the same exact thing? Because they think they know you better? That is not cool. I think the filter bubble idea is really, really one of the most dangerous things out there. And so, like I said, maybe one of the most important things is to switch, is to start changing where you search for your things. Now, I was telling you about how here there's no ads and they're not tracking and there's private browsing. Well, that leads us to a browser. You may be using Chrome, you may be using Firefox. Firefox is not bad, but you do need to go in and actually tweak some settings. But here is a browser that you literally can just download and you don't have to worry about anything. It already has a built-in ad blocker. It doesn't track anything that you do. You practically have a private browser the entire time, unless you're on Facebook or Google, which, by the way, on those websites, doesn't matter how private you want to be, those websites are taking in the information that you're giving it, which makes you the product. And Brave is telling you you are not the product for them, which is really cool. And, I'm a bit more on the nerdy side and love technology advancements, especially in currencies. So Brave is actually also a browser that has its own cryptocurrency. It's really cool because what that does is they're trying to weed out the bad way of advertising nowadays, and they're trying to do it in an organic manner where the websites that you visit, the places that you like to go, you can actually offer the token that they are creating. And it's actually called Basic Attention Token, so it's like BAT. And really, if you just want to use this browser and not even worry about that, you don't have to worry about it. But if you want to get more into it, this browser is very powerful and has a lot of things to offer. So Brave.com is really cool. Brave looks like a little lion here with a shield. A very cool browser. It actually was, if I remember correctly, one of the co-founders of Firefox. And he wanted to make an even more amazing browser. So that's pretty much the majority of what I wanted to show. There's two other things because phones are so common that I did want to show. So I want to tell you now about a certain thing that Facebook has been caught for, where there was a couple who was getting all these weird advertisements on Facebook and Google, and they were all connected. And they were like, I just didn't even search for that kind of thing. Like, what's going on here? And so they decided to do a little experiment amongst each other. They sat in their room, in their living room, didn't have a TV on, and they decided, maybe let's just talk about cat food. Let's just talk like we have a cat. They don't have a cat, but they wanted to talk about that. And sure enough, before they even went to bed that night, they checked their phones and they had cat food advertisements. They didn't search for this. They didn't do anything but talk about it in their living room together. And guess what? Their phones were listening. That meant that the microphone was on and that there were apps using it. And it was probably Facebook. And if it wasn't Facebook, it was an app that was connected to Facebook, because Facebook has so many apps that are connected to it. So that is very important. That's a very important thing to think about, is that yes, there's all these microphones listening to you, but do you really want your phone listening to you all the time? It's on your person all the time. So real quick, for Android, there is an app called Microphone Blocker app. And it's a great app because once you install that application, it literally will allow you to block all of what your microphone does, except for when you use it to call and talk to people. You can actually do what's called whitelisting for certain apps that you want the microphone to be used for, where you allow that app to use your microphone through the microphone blocker. And so it's very important that you get this app if you want that microphone to be cut off. For iPhone, it's a little more difficult because they do not have an app for it. And therefore, I can't completely verify whether it will work 100% or not. But Apple claims to be private. I don't believe it. But what they offer you is, if you launch your settings app on your iPhone or iPad, and you tap underneath of the settings, privacy, and then under privacy, you go to microphone and tap that. When you get into that window, there's going to be all of your applications that use the microphone. So Facebook will definitely be in there. It will definitely be in there, and you should turn it off. And any other application that you think is in there that should not be using that microphone, go ahead and turn it off. It's going to already be on in the default position, which is ridiculous, but go ahead and turn it off. Okay, so that's pretty much the tools that I think are basic, that I believe everybody should be thinking about. And the world is only going to get way more ridiculous if we all continue to ignore or be apathetic about these things. We really need to take our privacy back, because it's our human right. And we've been conditioned into a state to where we don't really think about it or care about it, and we really should. It's our future It's the people that we care about in our lives, such as children or grandchildren's future, and even the future generations. You may never meet them, but it's about the future. And I think if you're passionate about locking down your privacy and taking some of these steps here that I've mentioned, if you're interested, you can let me know, and I can go into a more advanced thing. I could talk about some blockchain currencies and maybe some more advanced kind of things if you're interested. If you have any questions, shoot them out my way. But I want to leave you with one thing here. Most people turn away from change. But the only constant in this world is the fact that it changes. You be the change.